Well, guys, we got two engines down. We ran the Tunnel Ram FE. Silly quick is the way it revs. That FE shouldn't rev like that. That motor is just beyond good. I wish it was mine. Unfortunately, it's not. The next video, we ran this engine, the Mystery FE, or the FE that Ford never built, or however you want to refer to this engine as. We ran it. I call it my budget FE because there's really no money in this, but it was built from stuff I had laying around. Good running engine. We need to cut the oil filter open and look at it, but good running engine. Sounds pretty good. Sounds like one of them old pulling truck motors. You know what I mean? Well, today we switch gears, and today is the day we get the Pontiac motor on the run stand, or at least in this video, we get the Pontiac motor on the run stand, fire it up, and see if, fingers crossed and the Lord blesses us, if our good fortune continues on having just smooth break-ins. So y'all hang in there through the intro. We're going to get to work on getting this Pontiac on the stand.
I'd say it's a nut job.
Does anybody else's engine hoist never actually roll straight? Do they all kind of crab walk? I guess it'd be easier to see this way. They all do this. Why do they not go straight? Kind of just do this. Or is mine the only one? I can never pull it straight back or push it straight forward. It's always, what? If a man could invent one. All right, so the budget FE build deal here. It's tucked away over here in Forgotten Acres, and with some other projects. I will be wrapping it up in plastic, and that's where it's going to stay until it goes to the project that I believe it's going to go to. The Tunnel Ram FE is sitting here on transport stands or engine cradle, whatever you want to call it. It's going to be loaded in the back of the truck here before long, and it will be headed on its way to its destination of choice. I'll tell y'all all about that in the video where we deliver it. And now it's time to load that one up. My engine hoist seems to have developed some erectile dysfunctional issues here. As it sits here, you can slowly watch it just start creeping down. And yes, it's tight. So apparently, I have a seal leaking on it somewhere. But most engine hoists don't get used as much as this one does. I'm whooped already today. Woo! It's been a long day. Been trying to clean up a little bit. All right, so let's get that one on the run stand. That one is going to be a tad bit different. One, because it's a GM product, and we don't normally do those. But two, I actually have a full exhaust, mufflers, and everything that I won't be able to hook to that one, run it out the door outside, and fire it up, and we'll be able to hear what that one sounds like through exhaust and all. That'll be different. I don't think I've ever put exhaust on a engine on a run stand. So it'll be different to hear what it sounds like through exhaust and all just sitting there. Well, there it is. It's physically on the run stand. Now, I was joking with my wife and said that the run stand was mad at me because there's 5 holes in these legs, each one to move up and down. There's 5 holes in each one of the rear legs to move up and down. There's 5 holes across each side to go out and back this way. And those 2 bars that come down that hook the rear of the motor, there's 5 holes in it. A bunch of holes. No matter what combination of holes I use, that GM motor will not sit in the center of that run stand. It sits off to one side. Now, that doesn't actually matter for anything, but it sits to one side. It just does.
I told my wife Stan was pissed because I put a GM product on it and it refuses to cooperate.
Relax, it's a joke.
So I gotta put the harmonic balancer on the front of it. I'm gonna go ahead and put the pulleys on it. Hook fuel lines up. This one I need an MSD box for. I gotta put the MSD box and wire it. Carburetor on it. Again, this one here, we have, it not being centered I'm gonna have to tinker a little bit. This one, I have full exhaust pipes to go on it. And with it not being centered, I'm gonna have to get creative about how to run that full exhaust out the back. Anyway, there's a lot of things here I'm gonna have to fiddle with to try to get this one set up on here. All the wiring's different. Naturally, my switch ignition and all is wired through a Ford solenoid. I'm gonna have to tinker with that a little bit. There's a few things I've got to work with. So it's gonna take a little bit to get everything wired up and ready to go. It'll be seconds in your time, but it's going to be probably a full day for me of tinkering and playing with things. But it's almost ready.
All right, so now what we've got to do is put the MSD box on there. And there's some people out there who've never fooled with an MSD box. And they're a little intimidated. They may not admit it, but they're a little intimidated because wiring freaks people out. And hear me when I say I'm right there with you. I'm not a big fan of wiring. But let me show you an MSD box and how easy it really is.
All right, so right here we have an MSD box.
You get, this is a 6AL, which is what I use a lot. You get that. And then what really intimidates people is all of this. That intimidates people. But here's the truth of the matter. All of this, you got one plug, plugs into here. And as far as where the rest of the wires go, I'm going to show you a hack. This is top secret. A lot of people do not know this, so don't let the cat out of the bag. If you don't know how to wire one, if you don't know where all these wires go, you take this box right here and flip it over. There's the wiring diagram right there. That tells you where every wire goes. It's really, really simple. You don't need a whole lot of wires. You got a power wire and a ground wire, and then you got wires that go out to your coil and a tack signal. There's only a few wires. There really isn't much to these. They're fairly simple to wire, so do not be scared of these things. And the great thing about the 6AL box, pop this little cover open right here. Right there is your rev limiter. Very, very easy to use. I'm a big fan of a 6AL box. Now, if you've got other stuff on yours, you're trying to control nitrous and all that, you may want something different.
As I said, very simple. You have this green and violet wire here. Think of this as an extension. One end goes to that wiring harness, one end goes to your mag pickup or your distributor. Well, because we're on a run stand and we're this far apart, I'm not going to use this. I'm just going to hook it to the green and violet on the harness right to that, because I'm just going from here to here. I'm going literally 2 inches. So I'm just going to put this back in the box and not use this right now. This is what you use on a car when you mount that inside that box there. When you mount that box inside the car and you have to run through the firewall or wherever you mount it, you want all the distance you can get. So that's why you use that instead of this little short connector. But since I'm just going here, I'm bypassing it. I'm not using it. Once you get that plugged up, a lot of these, again, all these colors are on the back of there, but you can look at them and get kind of self-explanatory. These go to your coil. There's a switch wire, a hot wire, a ground wire, a tack wire, and I don't remember what this one is. I'll have to look on the back of it. But this is all the wiring there is. This is it. This is what wires up at MSD. Don't be intimidated by it. Everything you need will come supplied. All the little connectors, the little feet, everything comes supplied with you, including these little boogers right here. They go onto the coil so that your plugs, which on that harness look like this, can actually hook to the coil without having to cut and skin wires and do all that. There's no reason to have to cut any of the wires that come with your MSD kit. It comes with pretty much like an out for every situation. So take that, drop it on there. Just a little washer on there. Nut back on there. Grab the smallest wrench you own. Tighten this back down. And now you have converted that from a ring terminal to a push-on style. And now you don't have to cut any wires. On the main harness for the kit, it has these little plugs already made onto it. So now you just push these on and your coil's hooked up. We'll put those on both sides here. Once we get back over here, take those two wires with the ends on it, we put on the coil right here. Orange goes to positive, which I've put on the outside here, away from everything. And black goes to ground. There you go, just like that. Now, you might want to turn these around so your wires aren't pulled like that, but for right now, for a run stand, this is perfect. They can decide how they want to run everything once they get it home. So now that's hooked up, the distributor's hooked up. So what do we have left on here now? We have left these wires right here. A hot, a ground, and ignition. So what's left is this heavy one is positive, goes to the positive side of the battery, negative side of the battery. This goes to a switched 12 volt, and this right here, wherever the end of it is, this gray wire right here is your tack wire. This wire right here is not used. So for the purposes of my run stand, coming off my run stand, this purple wire is an ignition wire, the hot wire for the coil, and this green wire is my tack wire. So I'll take those two wires, and what I will do is I will hook my ignition wire to this red wire, because that's a switch 12 volt, and then my tack wire will go to this gray wire, and they'll just kind of hang there for the purpose of the stand, because this box will go with this engine. So I don't want to mount anything to my run stand. There's also the challenge with the GM motor that the starter is on this side over here, where on the Ford it was on that side. So my cables, I got to make sure I got cables long enough to reach over here and not, you know, catch the spinning wheel of death there. As I said earlier, I've never put an exhaust system on the run stand, so we've got to see if we can make it work in here. I got to fill in the legs right here behind the motor that actually hold the motor up are going to be in the way on both sides. I don't know. I'm not a GM guy. I knew I didn't have starter bolts, and I went into the local parts store and told them, listen, I need starter bolts for a Pontiac 400. They said, is it the long or the short ones? I said, the long ones. Okay, and they give me, I've opened this pack. They gave me a little pack of bolts that's got multiples in it. They said, now you're covered for either one. It doesn't matter which one it is. Okay, well, I'm not a GM guy, so I didn't pay it a whole lot of attention. This is what was in this thing right here. He said, you covered for both now. Here's your long ones, or you got the long one and the short one. Either one, you're covered now. Well, I mean, you can see those are different. Every one of them's different length. But I'm thinking, okay, well, I don't know Chevy starters that well, so maybe. But you can see here, this starter here, that both the bolts need to be the same length. And appears that right there is a little too long, because the thread's end right here and there's some shank right there. So, but you can put a washer or two on there and fix that. That's no big deal. But this bolt here, which is the other long bolt, doesn't even remotely, it stops right there. It's not even remotely long enough to go through there. And both sides of this is the same size. So apparently none of these bolts are actually the right bolt. So I guess GM has more than one standard bolt. Like I said, I can make this work, but what I'm going to do is carry these back to the parts store and put them back in this package and just say, listen, these bolts won't work, and see if there is another set of bolts besides these. There we go. Good as new. I may even take this with me.
Freaking tunnel ram FE has developed its own fan club. People now drive by to see that engine. It's okay. It's all good. It's all good. Honestly, if it wasn't here, I'd drive by to see it too. My frustration level right now has nothing really to do with the engine, but I kind of hope I don't ever decide to do a Pontiac motor again. I'm not a fan at the moment. Okay, we finally got the debacle with the starter bolts taken care of. I simply went and bought grade 5 bolts, and there you go. I'm sorry, grade 8. I simply went and bought grade 8 bolts. Grade 8. I can't even talk today. Whew, I'm wore out. And got that mounted on there, getting the other stuff taken care of now. The thing that's taking me the longest is the wiring. Yes, I know it's just a run stand. The problem is everything I run is Ford engine, so all my wiring, sensors, and everything run down this side. On this engine, everything's over here. So I'm having to, some of my wires ain't long enough, so I'm having to redo some wiring, and even though I don't have plan to do any more of this, I'm going to try to make the stand a little more universal so that I won't have to go through this if I do decide to do something in the future. The two FEs, because since I've had this stand, FEs is the only thing that's been ran on it. So the two FEs I put on there back to back, we had them on there and fired up within a few minutes. This right here so far has been a full day, just getting everything wired and plumbed. But we're almost there. We're getting closer. I will show you one little thing yeah, hang on. So the fellow that actually owns this that I'm built it for, bought a bolt kit, bought a box that had every bolt in it for an engine. They were all in there. So I naturally didn't save any of the old bolts because he wanted all new hardware. Well, the new hardware, of course, did not come with head bolts. So I went out and bought some ARP head bolts. No big deal. But the timing chain cover bolts it came with had studs on these bottom two. Okay, sounds hunky-dory and fine, right? The problem is when I put the harmonic balancer on, the studs were long enough to where they actually came in contact with the balancer, so the motor would not rotate because the harmonic balancer was jammed up against the stud. So promptly pulled those two out and put bolts in place of those studs. I don't know why those two particular ones needed studs, but now they have bolts. And if that becomes an issue with some of the accessories later, I don't know. I have no clue because I don't know what accessories are going on this. So with all that being said, I've got the fan and the pulley, do I have the water pump pulley? I've got the crank pulley out there. I know I just painted it a nice satin black. It's going back on here. So I'm getting it assembled. It's just plucking away here and there at what I actually have to pluck away with. And the plan is for this thing to make noise as soon as I can possibly get it to make noise, because I'm ready to have this thing done. It has been a chore. All right, all the wiring is done. Got the pulley on the front of it, the crank pulley on it, starters on it. My wiring, it's just all kind of hanging here because this box goes with the engine. So I'm not going to cut any of these wires because I don't know where they're going to put it. So wires go all the way down to the ground and come back across it and go up here. But everything's wired up. Everything's hooked up. I need to put a couple of zip ties here just to make sure nothing gets sucked down into that spinning wheel of death there. And I have to hook up my fuel line. And that's it. Once I hook up my fuel line, I got to put the coil wire on. I hadn't done that yet. Put the coil wire on, hook up the fuel line. And then I got to figure out how I'm going to get this exhaust hooked up on this thing, because they want to hear it running with the exhaust. So I got to figure that out. Once I do those couple of things, I think we'll finally be ready to fire this thing. I actually really do look forward to hearing this one run. It should be pretty rowdy. The cam specs that's on this one is pretty rowdy. So I look forward to hearing it. So hopefully here in the next few minutes. Okay, so now we have oil to all the rockers. We have tons of oil pressure. You don't usually see oil pressure quite that high off of a crappy drill. Now, I say that I don't fool with a lot of Pontiacs. That may be normal for a Pontiac. I don't know. I know typically I'm used to seeing 25, 30 pounds of oil pressure off of a drill motor. But now that we have all that, we can get the valve covers back on, drop the distributor back in, and it should be ready to make noise. Good noises. Only good noises. If you're not used to dealing with Pontiac motors, I'll tell you a little something that can get hidden from you. Maybe it won't, but I'll tell you something that can get hidden from you. Pontiacs have, in my opinion, a weird oiling system. And there is some freeze plugs, expansion plugs, frost plugs, whatever terminology you want to do, that goes into the back of the motor. Behind one of those plugs is a second plug. It's a threaded plug. And if you forget that, leave that out, miss that, whatever the case may be, if it doesn't get installed, your engine will make oil pressure, and it will oil all the rockers on the driver's side. But it won't oil any of the rockers on the passenger side. It's kind of like, it's weird. It's got a weird oiling system. I will also say this, the Pontiac has a lot of weird things about it. I've done a lot of research on these motors, these engines, since I've been working on this one and building this one. I've honestly learned more about Pontiac than I cared to know. I am a Ford FE guy. I'm not just a Ford guy, I'm an FE guy. And everybody knows that. And I have picked on this little Pontiac motor a bunch when it's weird things like an odd size freeze plug and odd size bolts here and there. And just, I picked on them about different things. But from what I have read, and I don't have any firsthand information about it, what I have read, these engines are tough little bastards. Like, from everything I read, these things are rock solid. I don't know. There may be something to them. I do know we are fixing to know what one sounds like. All right, I don't even have a fuel line hooked up to it yet. The fuel line's hanging right here. But I'm gonna spin it over and just make sure all of our connections are good. And then we'll hook fuel to it. See what we can do with it. Two things. One, the wiring's obviously right. Distributor works. Coil's hooked up right. MSD's hooked up right. Because it actually tried to crank. I was just trying to spin it over a little bit and make sure all the connections were good. I think it tried to crank because this is the community carburetor and probably still has a little fuel left in the carburetor, even though the fuel line wasn't hooked up. Second thing we know is, well, apparently the battery on the run stand is pretty much dead. So might want to charge on that just a little bit before we actually go to try to make noise to this thing. Y'all hang in there. It's about to get good. Well, that didn't sound too bad, did it? Sounds like a pretty nice engine, what you could tell. I don't really like to run one with open manifolds. Now, let me clarify. I'll drive one with open headers. Like, I'll drive it around that Cougar the first year, maybe not the first year, the first 6 months that I had that motor in that car, I drove it with open headers, not a stick of exhaust under it. Open headers don't bother me. I'm not a big fan of just manifolds. So it runs, sounds good, runs good. I just got to figure out how to make exhaust pipe work on a run stand. Everything's kind of in the way. I have laying right there, I have the other one laying over there, full exhaust from my front of the car. Problem is, it's the legs here are kind of in the way here. Over here, my battery is kind of in the way. I mean, I could move the battery. I get closer to the spinning wheel of death when I move the battery over. It's going to take some figuring. All right. I've done something I've never done before, and we now have full exhaust on a run stand with turn downs at the rear bumper. If my run stand had a rear bumper, I guess they're turn downs to the rear bumper of the Galaxy, right? Yeah. Now I just got to figure out how I'm going to set the battery and it still reach, and make sure nothing gets on the exhaust. That's probably going to leak, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I went and asked for donut gaskets to fit these manifolds and got these. They fit the pipes fine, and I don't really know how this is supposed to work. I'm a header guy, so I'm used to just gasket and bolting it together. Not really a manifold person. They fit the flange on these pipes real good, but they're way, way bigger than the manifold opening is. So it seems like there might be some gappage in here, and I've got them cranked down tight. I kind of expect exhaust leaks on both sides. It may or may not. This thing may sound like Grandpappy's old dump truck that he kept around to haul fertilizer with, and I don't know. I've never tried to exhaust on a run stand before. Don't know that I'd ever do it again. And the real question is going to be is, once it cranks up, this engine stand moves a little bit. So once it cranks up and starts running, are those pipes actually going to stay on those jack stands that are holding them up, or is all that going to fall and this is going to turn into a disaster? I don't know. But I did squirt just a little gas in the carburetor. 40 pounds of oil pressure at idle, and as soon as you tap the gas on it, the oil pressure starts climbing. Perfect. What do you know? I didn't hear an exhaust leak. It actually worked like it was supposed to. How about that? There you go. It runs good, makes around 40 pounds, a little more, give or take, 40 pounds of oil pressure at idle. As soon as you touch the throttle, the oil pressure climbs. It seems like a very happy little motor. I'm kind of well pleased with it, even though I'm not personally a Pontiac guy. I'm kind of well pleased with it. I'm gonna hook some water up to it, and I'm just gonna fire it up and just let it sit here and run for a little while, rev it, and go through its paces. Y'all seen it run. Hear an exhaust is hearing exhaust. You know what I mean? Somebody asked me earlier if I'd go through specs on some of these motors. This particular engine is 461 cubic inches. It started out as Pontiac 400. Called Butler Performance and got a stroker kit for it. It's got Butler did all the balancing. They took care of everything. It comes, all that's already done. It comes with the paperwork that shows you the weights, the pistons, the weights, the rings, the pins, the rods, everything. All that. Butler done a phenomenal job on this. Comes with the bearings. Their stroker kit is out of the box, ready to go. I gotta admit, not being really into the Pontiac world, Butler Performance was an absolute joy to deal with. They were absolutely phenomenal. So, with that being said, then it's got the 6X heads on it. Pontiac guys like those heads. I'm not real familiar with them, but apparently they're really good heads. So it's got 6X heads on it. Edelbrock intake, like our Edelbrock stuff, right? On the run stand, we'll run it with the Edelbrock AVS2 carburetor, which has the annular boosters in it. Outside of that, the heads have been gasket matched, port matched. Outside of that, it is what it is. The engine is about 10.5 to 1 compression. It's got, I think they used Ross. I had the box laying around here. They used Ross racing pistons. But it looks like a stock 400, which I think is kind of the look he's going for. This is going in a Pontiac Trans Am, and some things were limited because of space, but all in all, the engine turned out really, really nice, and it runs good, makes phenomenal oil I can't talk today. It makes phenomenal oil pressure. Sounds actually pretty good through exhaust. I've never tried to put exhaust on a run stand before, so that was a new challenge for me, but I gotta admit, it sounded pretty good. It sounds a lot tamer than I think it is, because it should make pretty good horsepower. But yeah, there it is, the Pontiac 461, right? 460, yeah. I keep forgetting if it's 460. Yeah, 461. And it's man, I'm pleased with it. I don't know if everybody else would be, but I'm very pleased with it. I think it runs great. It's got a good sound to it. It's a good engine. Good engine. That concludes the 3-engine series that we done. The first engine we done was the Tunnel Ram FE. Everybody loved that one. That thing is wicked. It's headed home. The second one we done was the Budget FE, the mixed up FE that was built with just random parts, and it sounds awesome, but completely different than the Tunnel Ram motor. And then, of course, the little Pontiac that could. Hope y'all enjoyed these. Probably won't be doing an engine build for a little while, because honestly, I need a freaking break from building engines. I have been building engines this entire year nonstop, and it's time to stop. Take a little break. We'll be back to building engines later, but we got to get the Galaxy back in. We got to get that Jeep in here. We got several things we got to do, And we've got a trip planned that I think y'all are going to enjoy. So we're taking a break from building engines for a little while. But this thing was fun. It was a challenge for me just because I've never done a Pontiac. So doing something different. You know, probably won't do another Pontiac just because they're not my wheelhouse. But I learned more about Pontiacs in the past month or so than I cared to ever know. Just kidding, Pontiac guys. There's nothing wrong with them. Honestly, I don't know anything about a Pontiac, but they say these 400s are pretty doggone bulletproof. We'll see. God bless you guys. I hope the Lord bless you more today than he did yesterday. To him be the glory. Guys, we will see you on the next one. And please, please, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and please share these videos. Sharing these videos helps us grow and get the word out of what we're doing. So God bless you guys. We'll see you on the next one.
I'd say it's a nut job.